welcome to this introduction to Eve Market Watch, which is a little tool that helps you keep markets stocked. What we're going to look into today is, you can see on the stream, I've put up some slides there and I'll walk through the app with you, and you can do that as well on your browser. So what we're first going to be looking into is how you can actually use this platform and does it help you? Then we'll look over some basic features if you're just into some trading, some importing, and then we'll hop into some more complex mechanisms for those who want to maintain cooperation and alliance item watches. Eve Market Watch's primary purpose is to help you monitor markets for holds in the market. So it's not like a tool that tells you, hey, your own market orders are running low, like you imported 200 damage controls and now they're only 50 and you should import, but we'll check the whole market. So it is more a bit aimed towards a laid-back importing style. So you, for example, import 500 damage controls, then they go down to 300, someone else puts up 200, then those go down to 0, and only when there's only a certain threshold, like for example 50 left on market, then you will get the notification, which is in form of an in-game email, which you can also have a preview of on the evemarketwatch.com website. So while we're going through this right now, I encourage you to hop over to evemarketwatch.com and sign in, and we'll go over those steps too as well. So the first points I'm going to show you on the slides, and then we'll switch right into the tool. One more thing. This tool is aimed to be a rather simplistic market helper. So you won't find all the complex niches like asset tracking, value tracking, seeing how much profit you're actually making. If you want that, I can only recommend you to use complementary tools like JEVE Assets, who are doing a great job at that. All right, let's jump right into the basic features. So as I said before, take a second, head over to evemarketwatch.com and sign in so you can follow along the things we're actually doing here. When you log in, the Eve SSO will ask you to grant a few permissions, which are the search structures and read structures, as well as structure markets. Those three permissions are needed to allow you to actually find your structures, like the GE Soda Factory, or for JITA you don't need any permissions. If you're only doing high sec trading, then that might be a little bit too much, but that's it. And structure markets is required to read the market orders of that particular structure. So then we can compare those orders against what you defined in the item watches. Let's zoom in here a bit. So what you're seeing here, that's just the plain blank page that awaits you when you log in for the first time. The item watches are always tied to certain structures because you can list items in a certain market, and we will always monitor that exact market for the item watches you have. There are features on the roadmap that you can copy market watches from one market to another and should be released over the next weeks. For now, you have to define them on your own for each structure. But as we will see later, you can also use EvePraisal to make that a bit less tedious. So go ahead in here and select one structure, for example, the GE Soda Factory or the PCME, I think it's called Fortress Impulse. As you will see, you have a little drop-down that shows you the structures we found for that search term. You can do a bit broader search. For example, searching for GE-AV. That will show you a lot of structures. Unfortunately, also those that don't have markets, because we can't really figure out if player-owned structures do have a market module running or not. So you have to decide, do those checks on your own. But I'm assuming you will probably import 4 market hubs. So in here, we are going with the GE-8V Soda Factory. In the stream, you can already see that there are a couple item watches created in the bottom. You will probably just see an empty table where you can start creating ones. You might also notice that there are already 3 tabs below the item watches, which are private, corporation, and alliance. On your usual operation, you're only going to modify the private watches. In the 102 section later, we'll get into how you can create and modify those corporation and alliance watches and also supplement them with webhooks. But for now, you as a normal trader only need to know that you have private watches that will notify you, and there might be corporation and alliance watches that you can copy from. So what I'd like you to do next is, once you have a structure selected, go down into the private item watches and create a new watch. And we'll do that together here. We'll take it in here. You paste, you write the name of the thing you want to stock, for example, an Astero. Go select that. And you have the option to choose between a sell and buy orders. That may help you if you're hunting for certain items. Otherwise, if you want to stock a market, just go for sell. You can also switch around the comparator bit. Usually you just keep that to less than, so you will get a notification when there are instead only 47 items instead of the 50 you're aiming for stocked. Then put in some number and go create it. If everything worked out, the item will pop up in the top of your item watches. And as you see here, we found an item that is not stocked as much as we want it right now. You might not really want to stock 100 Asteros in GE, 40 might be enough, but this example just shows us what happens when you add something that is not stocked enough. And within an hour latest, you will get an in-game mail for that item. What you can do next is we have some more details for that particular item. So just click that row and it will show you some more information about that particular item. In the left, you can see the order type, how much is stocked right now. Be aware that this might be delayed up to a maximum of 3 hours. So it might not be perfectly what is right now stocked on the market, but it should give you a good indication. Below, we have a little calculation of how many days it probably remains, for how many days the market will suffice. So if we have 50 items stocked right now, we're expecting it will probably deplete in 4 days. So that's a good estimation for you of when you might want to crank up the price. Below, we have some basic numbers, the price it is currently sold locally for, the margin compared to GDASell, GDASell itself, GDABuy, and you have a little icon that you can click to copy the type name to your clipboard to then paste it into Eve if you're doing some purchases or market checking. Don't 100% rely on those numbers you see here, and always back check them to the market you're importing from. So you might have a bunch of item watches defined here. If you later want to edit them currently, you have to delete and then, you have to select and then delete the item watch to then recreate it. There's a feature on the roadmap to allow you to edit those watches, so you don't need to delete and recreate. Cool. So that's probably it for the private item watches. You have a little filter here, and there's a feature that I haven't deployed yet that allows you to filter out all item watches where the volume is enough. So for example, if you push that button, the Tenorman Afterburner would drop out because it is not really relevant right now because you don't need to import it. But the Acolyte and Armor Explosive Hardener, those would stay. Cool. So we'll switch over to the corporation and alliance watches and how you would use them as a market trader. You can see under corporations that no one has taken control for Spooky Newbies in this case. So if you see that page, you can take control and manage the market watches for your corporation. If you want to hand over that to someone else, you have to do it through the settings in the top right corner, or just message me so I can switch out the owner. I've already taken control for the Alliance market watches that you can see in the bottom. You can easily just create some item watches here. For example, let's say we want to have, I think you can't dock with Titans, but you could dock with Rorquals. So let's say for our Alliance, we want to have at least 10 Rorquals stocked on the market. In here, you will have pretty much the same details. You'll see that they're a little bit bogged right now in the left-hand corner because we just created this item. And there must be an item watch existing to actually start tracking the market volume. So that means if no one is tracking market, or if no one has item watches for example, the Tenement Afterburner, the app won't check the market for that particular item. Yeah, we'll scroll down here a little bit, and I think I don't have the Acolyte one in my market watches. So with every corporation or alliance market watch, you will see that there's a little button you can use to copy it to your private watches. I'll use that one now. We'll give you a little dialog where you can modify the item watch that you want to create. For example, setting the threshold. I'm pushing that to 1,000 right now, just to check how much escrow that would need for me. So it's using the current JITA price to compare it with your threshold you defined. So you can see how much that import would be worth. So for me, a good example would be to import like 10,000 right now. So I'm just pushing 30 million into it and then leave it stocked. And I want to be notified then when it drops below, let's say 100. So let's click on copy. And that item watch will now appear in your private watches once you refresh the page. If you already have an item watch, for example, with the Tenement Afterburner, that's why I skipped it earlier, it will override the private watch if you copy that again. So you will see in here that which items you already copied and which you can copy as a new item watch. And if you want to override that, just use this one or recreate it under the private item watches. So let's switch back to the private item watches. You can use EvePraisers to import a bunch of item watches. So we'll do that now by going to evepraiser.com. And in here, we say we want to keep a few minerals stocked. Just submit and send. And then you want to copy over the URL. Switch over into Eve Market Watch. Paste it in here. And you will see that a little bit, the thresholds will be the ones from the EvePraiser amount. So if you specify, for example, 100 million, it will take 100 million as a threshold. Here you can also modify the cell type again, the comparator, and then click on it. And here you see a Maxillon market watch and a Tritanium market watch appeared. And those look rather healthy. We have about 400 million stocked for Tritanium and 100 million for Maxillon. And here you see someone already tracked those, so we have some history for the item. All right, cool. Then we'll hop into the more complicated parts. So we already covered how you can take control by just switching to one of those sections and basically clicking take control if it's free. If someone is already maintaining watches for your corporation or alliance and you want to take over that, you'll have to contact them to transfer ownership or contact me, Rehan Shazi, to do that manually. If you want to transfer ownership, you'll hop over to the settings section. And it will show you here for which corporation or alliance you are a maintainer. If there's already a maintainer, it will tell you that. And if you're the maintainer, it shows you here how things work. But we wanted to talk about the transfer ownership. So if you want to transfer ownership, for example, the alliance, you have to pick someone who is also signed up at Eve MarketWatch. Otherwise, it won't allow you to do that. So for example, right now I could say I want to transfer ownership to this guy, and it will then say, hey, you can transfer ownership right now. It first does a check if that user actually exists in Eve and within the database, and then you can transfer it. And should you get some random error message, then that user probably doesn't exist. If it's too weird, then just ask for support on Discord. All right, so let's switch back up to the webhooks. If you want to add a webhook, you need to have that API or resource from the web deliver a specified payload format that we will look into a second. And you can just put it in here, say, this one, for example. It will probably not yield a proper result, so we will later get a bad status code. In here, this corner, in this column, you will see what the latest access code was. 200 is good. Anything at 400 or above is not so good, and you need to fix that. There are some special error codes if the parsing fails, and if those appear, you will also get more information on them. If you want to delete that again, just select it and delete it. And from that moment on, your API won't be parsed anymore. So let's look into the structure of the payload you need to provide. Your webhook or API needs to provide a certain JSON structure that contains the type ID of the item, the threshold you defined. For example, if you want to see 500 damage control 2 stocked, you would define a section like in the bottom, the type ID 2048 and the threshold 500. There you can also switch out the order type. Remember that sell will check for sell orders and buy will check for buy orders. And then you can define the comparators, which are less than, less or equal, greater than, and greater or equal. And in here in the bottom, I put in a link to a little guide that I published on EveTech that guides you through that thing again and is a bit better at explaining this than me right now. Anyways, if you try around with that and have problems using it, just hop on Discord and I'll help you out.